The citadel of glass shimmered beneath twin suns, a massive spire of crystal and light that towered over the capital world of Vareth Prime. Inside its luminous halls, silence was the law. The royal family of the Threxians, an ancient and proud alien species known for their grace and cold precision, had not known chaos within their walls for a millennium.
Until today.
A single cry broke through the sanctum, high-pitched, desperate, and heart-wrenchingly young. The princess's child had been born only 3 weeks prior, and her birth had been a political miracle, the uniting symbol of 3 rival Threxian houses. But now, her wailing echoed through the corridors, sharp enough to rattle even the hardened guards who stood at attention. None dared move to soothe her, for a Threxian royal infant was sacred, untouchable except by bloodline or healer. And the royal healers had failed. The child's temperature was plummeting, her bioluminescent veins dimming, and no Threxian dared to speak the word that hovered over them like a curse. She's dying. The alien princess herself, Soraya Vareth, stood beside the translucent crib, trembling, something no Threxian had ever seen their ruler do. Her silver eyes glowed with panic, and her voice, usually calm as frozen glass, cracked as she commanded, "Find someone who can help." Anyone. No one moved. The healers stood helpless. The guards bowed their heads. Threxians did not plead for help, and certainly not from outsiders. But there was one outsider in the citadel that day. Lieutenant Mason Hale, a human soldier assigned as an observer and diplomat's escort under the Human Threxian Peace Initiative, had been stationed nearby. He wasn't meant to enter the royal quarters, not ever. But when the alarms blared through the citadel and the cries didn't stop, he ran toward them without waiting for permission. When he burst through the ornate door, weapons immediately aimed at his head. "Human, you trespass on royal ground," shouted a guard, their crystalline armor refracting light like prisms. But Mason didn't stop. His instincts overrode his fear, the same instincts that had saved lives on battlefield med stations and remote colonies. He saw the baby on the glowing cradle, gasping, her pulse barely visible beneath transparent skin. "She's not breathing right," he said, stepping forward. "Her oxygen's crashing." "You will not," a healer began, but Mason cut her off. "Do you want her to live or not?" For a brief second, everyone froze, even the princess. Then, Soraya turned her gaze on him. Her eyes shimmered like molten silver as she whispered, "Human, what can you do?" "I can try," Mason said, "but I need permission." There was a moment of unbearable stillness. Then, Soraya nodded once, the smallest, most dangerous nod in the galaxy. "Do it." Middle, the breath between 2 worlds. Mason moved fast. He didn't have human medical gear, but he carried a field pack, the kind every soldier on the frontier worlds knew by heart. He knelt beside the cradle, scanning the baby's fragile chest. The child was unlike anything he'd seen, bioluminescent veins pulsing faintly, skin pale as crystal dust, her tiny body trembling. "She's suffocating," Mason muttered. "Her lungs aren't pulling an atmosphere. You're giving her the wrong mix." A healer hissed in offense. "Human, you cannot possibly understand Threxian." "I understand oxygen," Mason snapped. "And this baby's starving for it." He ripped open his kit, attaching a small oxygen injector designed for human use. It wasn't perfect. Threxians breathed a thinner, helium-rich atmosphere, but the baby needed air now. Mason carefully adjusted the valve, counting the beats between each breath. "Come on, kid," he whispered. "Stay with me." Soraya watched, trembling as the human pressed the injector to her daughter's chest. To her horror, he breathed through his own mask, then exhaled directly over the baby's mouth, providing trace gases her lungs could adapt to, a technique that would have horrified any Threxian scholar. And yet, the faint, dying light in the child's veins began to pulse again. A weak breath, then another, then a cry, small but sharp. The room filled with stunned silence. Mason leaned back, gasping, sweat glistening on his brow. He exhaled a shaky laugh. There we go. There's that voice. The princess's guards lowered their weapons. The healer stared at him like he had performed sorcery. Soraya fell to her knees beside the cradle, tears catching in the glow light. Her hand, long, slender, and faintly luminous, brushed her child's cheek. She breathes, Soraya whispered. She breathes again. Her gaze lifted to the human kneeling beside her. You did this? Mason hesitated. Just did what anyone would. Soraya shook her head slowly.
No.
Not anyone. No Threxian would have risked contamination. No healer would have given their own breath. She stood, regal even in her trembling. Human Hale, you saved the future of my bloodline. He gave a small, nervous grin. Guess that's above my pay grade. But Soraya didn't smile. She turned to her guards and said words that would ripple across two civilizations. From this day forward, Mason Hale is under my royal protection. The guards saluted instantly. The human had just been marked, not as a soldier, not as a visitor, but as a chosen protector of the crown. Weeks passed, the human among royals. Mason became something of a ghost legend in the citadel. The guards saluted him awkwardly now. Servants whispered when he walked past. The Threxian nobles, cold and elegant, regarded him with both fascination and suspicion. He had saved the royal infant, yes, but he was still human, still the product of a young, impulsive species that lived and died in the blink of a Threxian's lifetime. Yet the princess herself treated him differently. She summoned him often, not just for matters of protection, but for conversation. You humans, she said one day, sitting in her chamber of light and mirrors, her voice soft. You act first, think later. You risk without calculation. How can a species survive on chaos? Mason smiled faintly, because sometimes chaos saves lives. Like that day. Soraya tilted her head. You gave your breath to my child. In Threxian culture, that is a bond beyond words. It is life exchanged for life. He blinked. I didn't know that. You do now, she said quietly, which means, by our ancient rights, you are bloodbound to her. Mason froze. Wait, what does that mean exactly? It means, Soraya said with a small smile, that when my daughter is of age, her first protector, the one who shared breath, is part of her destiny. In some eras, they would even call it betrothal. Mason nearly choked on his tea. Betrothal? You mean? She laughed softly, the first real laugh he'd heard from her. Relax, human. Customs evolve. But still, it is significant. He couldn't help but feel the weight of it. Not just as a soldier, but as a man who had once been trained to see aliens as enemies. And now he was sharing conversations, warmth, and something dangerously close to friendship with one of their queens. Still, the peace between their races was fragile. And not everyone was pleased with Soraya's fondness for the human. The conspiracy, a kingdom in shadows. One evening, as the suns dipped below the crystal horizon, Mason was patrolling near the royal wing when he overheard voices, sharp, low, conspiratorial. The queen has grown weak. She favors the human. He pollutes the sanctum. Her child's survival was a curse. It binds our future to his kind. He froze, listening through the glass walls. These weren't mere servants. They were guards, members of the Silver Ward, the elite personal protectors of the royal family. At dawn, one said, We strike when she enters the reflection hall. The human will not interfere. But Mason would interfere. That night, he found Soraya in her chambers, cradling her now healthy child. "Your Highness," he said urgently, "there's a plot. Your guards." But she raised a hand. "I know." Mason blinked. "You know? You think I don't feel the shift in their minds? Fear leaves a scent, human. Even I can taste betrayal when it fills my halls." She turned, her expression unreadable. "And yet you warned me. You could have left. Humans value survival, do they not?" Mason met her gaze. "Some of us value loyalty more." For a moment, she said nothing. Then she handed him something small and gleaming. A dagger, crystalline and faintly humming with plasma energy. "Then stand with me, human. Stand not as my subject, but as my equal." He accepted it. Always. The battle in the Hall of Reflections. At dawn, the citadel was bathed in gold. The Hall of Reflections, vast and empty, lined with mirrored glass that stretched into infinity, became the stage for treachery. Soraya entered with calm grace, her child safely guarded behind sealed walls. Mason followed, armor gleaming, pulse steady. Then the light fractured. The silver ward turned as one, blades drawn. Their leader, a towering Threxian male with armor black as obsidian, stepped forward. "Forgive us, your grace. But the throne cannot be led by one who kneels to humans." Soraya's voice was ice. "Then you no longer serve the throne." "No," the guard sneered. "We serve Threxia." The first strike came fast, too fast for human eyes, but Mason moved quicker. His training kicked in, his instincts sharper than fear. He intercepted the blade meant for her, sparks scattering as steel met crystal. "You'll have to go through me," he growled. The alien warrior laughed, but Mason fought with the ferocity that had made humans both feared and admired across the stars. He dodged, countered, and struck, every motion raw and imperfect, but unstoppable. Soraya joined the fight beside him, her own blade slicing with precision and grace. Together, they fought, chaos and order in perfect rhythm. When it ended, the hall was silent once more. The traitors lay defeated. The light of the citadel shimmered with renewed brilliance. Soraya stood over the fallen leader and whispered, "You feared the human's breath. Yet it was that breath that gave life, not death." Ending a new kind of bond. Days later, the citadel healed. The conspirators were gone, the peace restored. And for the first time in Threxian history, the royal banners were woven with two symbols, the crest of Threxia and the insignia of Earth's Terran Guard. Mason stood at the balcony, looking out over the alien skyline. The child he had once saved now cooed in Soraya's arms, healthy and glowing. "You've changed my people, Mason Hale," Soraya said softly beside him. "Perhaps even more than I have." "Didn't plan to," he said with a small grin. "Just couldn't ignore a crying kid." She smiled faintly. "That is what makes humans dangerous. Not their weapons, not their armies, but their hearts." The suns began to rise again, twin flares of light cutting through crystal spires. Soraya turned toward him, her expression unreadable but warm. "You answered a cry no one else could hear. For that, Threxia will never forget you." Mason nodded, feeling something deep and strange stir within him. Not duty, not pride, but belonging. "Guess I'm not leaving anytime soon, huh?" Soraya's eyes gleamed with that soft silver light. "No, human," she whispered. "You've already become part of our legend." And as the first light touched their faces, Mason finally understood. He hadn't just saved a life. He had bridged two worlds.